Welcome back, Commander. My name is Korak, and I'll be your host for the evening, as this is Kane's Wrath. We are back in our coverage of the IES Invitational on the map Tournament Odyssey. Starting us off over in the top right-hand corner of the map, wearing the red robes, sporting the GDI gloves, this is Shock Trepid. His opponent for the moment in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, wearing the yellow robe, sporting the black hand gloves. This is Drive. Both fighters ready? Begin! Tournament Odyssey is brought to you by Stealth Tank Ballet. Park anywhere, disappear everywhere. Drive into Shock Trepid. This is actually one that I have been looking forward to. Drive seems to really favor his rush tactics. Let's see if that continues on further on into this tournament, into Shock Trepid, and let's see how Shock Trepid fares. If he does any better than Phoenix, or if he ends up having just as much trouble early on. We're not getting a sell-off of the MCV from Drive just quite yet. He's already transitioning over to his natural expansion and has 2 refineries out, so there's a pretty heavy chance that we're not getting a rush other than the 3 bikes actually moving their way in. Watchtower is out. They are beginning to focus on the Harvester, but I don't think they have the damage for it, and indeed they do not, as a single Pitbull and Watchtower managed to push them out of there slowly but surely. Drive Scouts definitely moving around, looking for an area, looking for a soft target to grab. They are going to see the MCV packing up. Shock Trepid may have made a little bit of a mistake here, taking a couple of shots on that construction yard, but the Pitballs are here for the defense as they slowly but surely push their opponent, push Drive outside of their base. Foxhole is deployed inside of Drive's main base, getting that little bit of scouting win in where it can. Rifleman squads might actually get a kill on this bike if it's not careful. It does manage to just barely survive, but now it has even less HP. Deployment of the MCV in the north, significantly behind Drive for this current moment, but Drive doesn't have anything up to start harvesting his natural expansion just quite yet, despite the fact that he is in here. He has popped up a, looks like War Factory, let's say Watchtower. War Factory up on the front line in order to fight these Pitbulls. Let's see if we get a Scorpion out. There it is, Scorpion there for the defense. That is going to be enough to push out those Pitbulls already. First Foxhole is being targeted down slowly but surely and taken out. Everybody seems to be developing their natural expansion rather nicely. The old main base for each seems to have 5 Harvesters in per player. That is the case. Bike and Buggy for Drive finally mopping up that last little pest inside of their base. It does look like a couple of Scorpion tanks are here, but maybe he's starting to focus on these fast-moving Bike and Buggy, which indeed he does have quite a good number of them. However, Shock Trepid does have APCs out. No AP ammo just quite yet, and we do have our first Predator tank, so he does appear to be ready for this fight. Bikes, unfortunately, wasting the majority of their volley off on a Rifleman squad and not even getting the kill off on them. Extremely unfortunate for Drive, and speaking of unfortunate, one bike rolls directly into its doom, getting a little bit too close to that Predator tank. Nobody's decided to grab the defense tower just quite yet. Both Tiberium spikes have been grabbed rather early in the game. That is going to be pretty traditional for them. Bike and Buggy circling around to the southern section of the map, looking for something to snack on, looking for a hole inside of Shock Trepid's armor. But Shock Trepid has been managing to shore up his defenses rather quite nicely, not giving an opening to Drive. Drive going for the easier target, taking out the Tiberium spike, but if he's not careful, he's going to end up in some danger as the Pitbulls and armor of GDI begin to slowly but surely move in for the defense of that Tiberium spike. However, that is something that Drive can use to his advantage. Popping on that Tiberium spike when he can in order to draw out his opponent. Looks like one Raider Buggy did make it inside his opponent's base, noticing the Watchtower, noticing the command post probably producing AP ammo. Much needed scout there from Drive. He's going to be able to use that to transition if he needs to, and he looks like he's getting a little bit of a transition, building up a couple more Scorpion tanks, building up some man spam. It looks like GDI is slowly but surely moving under there, but it doesn't matter because the real assault over here in the north as one Harvester gets targeted down and destroyed. destroyed. There is one hammerhead here for the defense, but it's not going to be able to do too much as it goes down and gets taken down. Another Harvester gets targeted over here by Drive. All of Shock Trepid's forces are outside of his base, and he is going to pay for it. Drive did finally find that hole in his opponent's armor, and he's been able to get almost 3 Harvesters out of it. There is a Watchtower with AP ammo, but it is too little too late. However, Shock Trepid has tried to turn the tables on his opponent as he moves into the natural expansion, into the main base with 2 sets of armor. They do not have the firepower to fight them over here at the secondary natural expansion, but maybe on the first. Nope, even on the first, on the old main base, they do not have enough firepower to fight this between the laser turrets and all of the Scorpion tanks plus Defender's advantage. That is going to spell the doom for this assault for Shock Trepid. And if Shock Trepid's not careful, he's going to take some unnecessary losses. Speaking of unnecessary losses, Oxcart is going to get targeted down and destroyed. Only 1 rifleman squad in there. I'm guessing it was for scouting. I'm really not quite sure what the plan was with that. A little bit of the armor getting caught over here, but nothing too bad. Scorpion tanks aren't really close. However, rocket spots might actually be able to take out one of the Predator tanks, as it does manage to fight a fighting retreat and may just barely make it out of there. One more rocket is all it'll take, or 1 trip on a Ladybug, and it is destroyed. Shock Trepid is beginning to group his forces. He wasn't able to get the kind of assault that he wanted by splitting up his forces, but I'm not sure it matters at this point because it looks like the diversity and the spread of overall units right now is in Drive's favor. This is a lot of armor. This is a lot of APCs with AP ammo in them, and if they have the Defender's advantage, that could make a little bit of a difference. Scorpion tanks moving their way in. Plenty of APCs here on the front line, but no rocket squads inside them to really deal with that. They'll need to be focusing on the man spam, winning where they can, not taking shots at the Scorpion tanks. Those shots are going to be almost useless. They are going to get a couple kills here and there, but really the man spam needs to be taken out. The Concave moving their way forward. Now Drive can finally get a couple of really good shots out. There is the decoy armor here to absorb some of the shots as the Hammerheads move their way in. More and more of the armor for GDI begins to go down left and right. He does not have the forces, I don't think, in order to take on Drive. I say that, and he's slowly but surely beginning to prove me wrong. These Predator tanks are much tougher than I originally had anticipated. However, the man spam is here to push out the other forces. The APCs are gone, which mean the man spam is going to reign supreme into these slow-moving Predator tanks. The Predator tanks cannot stop the assault over here, but the Hammerheads might actually be able to do it as Bike and Buggy do finally get targeted down and destroyed. One Harvester at so little HP and somehow able to live as it makes its way out of there. Hammerhead does get taken down slowly but surely, but this leaves the majority of Drive's forces over here. His man spam uncontested. He needed those Hammerheads in order to deal with the man spam because he does not have APCs. Man spam moving their way in on their opponent's base, in on Shock Trepid's base, and Shock Trepid is in trouble. He might lose his main base. He is developing his secondary natural expansion alongside the Drive, but losing this is still going to hurt, especially losing it for free. There is a small fire sale of the old main base, saving Shock Trepid just a little bit of money. I'm assuming that airfield's probably going to be next, but it does look like we're getting a couple of Hammerheads with their AP ammo built up and ready to go. If those Hammerheads can get in there on time, maybe they need 5 or 6, they can start dealing damage to these rocket squads. It looks like 4 is going to be the number as Shock Trepid moves his way in, trying to focus down all of these rocket squads. Rocket squads focusing on the airfield instead, stopping the production of Hammerheads, but the Hammerheads are able to mop up a couple of really good kills as the Mantis moves in and begins to finish off the last little bit of the Air Force of Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid is not looking in a healthy position. Watchtower goes up. Watchtower gets sold. Mantis tanks move their way in, and everybody is still slowly but surely developing their own armadas of units, their own armor, slowly moving through their sectors of the map. Doesn't look like there is any Bike and Buggy, or I take it back, actually, there's a couple of Bike and Buggy over here. Looks like Drive wants to hold on to that mobility. Not a bad idea if you're going to use man spam, if mix man spam with Bike and Buggy, march the man spam in a couple of tanks in one location, and then mark the fast-moving targets after the assault has begun into some of your opponent's softer areas. Shock Trepid has been able to build up a couple more of his forces and develop his secondary natural expansion slowly but surely. Has another airfield out and has a couple more hammerheads ready to go for this assault. Selling off of 3 of the Hand of Nods, actually getting a little bit of damage on his own units. Assault actually beginning on the secondary natural expansion over here for Shock Trepid, or for Drive, but I think Drive has the defenses here. And if Shock Trepid's not careful, he's going to get eviscerated over there in the north by all of that man spam, slowly but surely making their way across the map. There's not enough watchtowers, there's not enough APCs, there's not enough really much of anything here in order to stop Drive's steamroll through his base. Mantis taking down a couple of the hammerheads, the last little bit of the remaining hammerheads. Another watchtower going down as the assault continues on Drive, or on Shock Trepid's main base. Now new main base. There's the GG. Shock Trepid has thrown in the towel, moving us on to round number 2. Welcome to round number 2, Commander. Our map has now switched to Hampstead Gardens. Over in the top right, we have Shock Trepid holding on to his red and keeping his GDI. His opponent, of course, in the south is Drive, holding on to his yellow, holding on to his black hand, and getting the first round, taking his first little victory from Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid's got to step it up if he's going to go toe-to-toe with Drive, but maybe he just needs a little bit of time to get used to a player like Drive. However, Drive is not playing like he did in the previous match, like he did into Phoenix, where he has a bunch of those all in. Maybe Drive is more practiced against a player like Phoenix opposed to Shock Trepid, or maybe he's just as played into both players. I'm unaware. I haven't followed Drive's history too much to figure out exactly what he does and who he normally fights against and who he normally plays against. I do really hope to see him in... I'm not sure if anyone saw, there is another tournament. I think it's called Chrono Strike, that Cybert is, I think, primarily hosting. And it sounds like Zads and I will be able to dip our hats in the ring as well. Maybe at least for the finals. It sounds like everything, the group matches are going to be offline as everything moves into the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. Which I assume there will be, we'll be able to do those live, and Cybert sounds like he's going to try and do those guys' lives, and we'll definitely get to see that. I'm pretty interested. The prize pool for the Chronosphere is pretty massive. It's 2K. It's even more than this one, because I think the first place winner of the Chrono Strike gets I think 1K. However, this is not a small tournament either. The IES gets 700 for that top player. I think it's like 1,000 in total, maybe more on the line. I forget exactly how much the prize pool is for the IES. Either way, it's still a pretty decent amount, especially for a 15-year-old game that doesn't have a crazy amount of players. That does mean the same couple of faces do manage to get their wins and do manage to win a couple of these, but I think plenty of us are just happy in order to watch, happy in order to absorb some of this content. Shock Trepid still going rather traditional here, getting a couple of rocket squads inside of his APCs with Pitbulls up and ready to go. Drive being uncharacteristically quiet on his side of the map, not really doing anything too crazy, just developing his economy slowly but surely. There is his first little set of bike and buggy, a little bit later than we normally see from him, but maybe he's got something cooked up and ready to go. Shock Trepid grouping his forces, looking for something to snack on. If he's lucky, he's going to run into these rocket squads, these rocket bikes. They do indeed catch them as APCs take a couple of really good shots off with the rockets, but it looks like only one volley was all they were going to get. Shock Trepid, not wanting to fully commit to that, does back up and group up more of his forces. However, he does know now that Drive has bike and buggy out on the map. Garrison troops also going to see the exact same thing. Drive not wanting that free scouting is going to try to take it out, but it might actually turn into be a little bit of a trap as Shock Trepid moves his way in, taking a couple of really good pot shots off with the Pitbulls. Pitbulls continuing their assault, not able to see because of the fog of war, dealing with the elevation, but they're still continuing their assault. They're still continuing moving their way down the map. There's 4 of them left. That should be plenty to fight these rockets if they go for the attack bikes, which they very much so need to go for. One Pitbull does go down. A couple more more reinforcements do begin to join them. Laser turrets out on the front line, but of course they are in low power mode, so right now they're not going to be able to do too much. Drive not normally on the back foot when it comes to the aggression, but he is now, thanks to Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid trying to step up his game just a little bit in order to fight his opponent. If Drive is not careful, he's going to lose a Harvester. That Harvester is rather close. Pitbulls do manage to move their way in, taking a couple of really good shots on, taking it down to half HP. Secret Shrine out on the front line. One Pitbull almost going down. One indeed going down, leaving 4 Pitbulls, and Man Spam and a couple of Scorpion tanks are going to be enough to push out this paltry force of Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid transitioning once again into the airfield. Going to get those hammerheads, I assume, out here pretty soon, followed by AP ammo if he does not have it already. Looks like AP ammo is about halfway and counting. The interesting part will be to see how Drive responds to that. Drive still has been rather quiet for this game. I know he's tried, but maybe he's going for a more traditional strategy than he has previously. Those seem to have worked in his favor when he played like that into Phoenix. Looks like we've got our first little set of Shatterers out here. That's going to be decent into this Man Spam that Shock Trepid was able to get a little bit of scouting on. Speaking of scouting, Orca Strike moving its way over across the south of the map. The target isn't important. The revealing of the Fog of War is, as they slowly but surely make their way across the map. Probably going to hit these Harvesters. Actually, if they're not careful, they could lose a Harvester. Backing the Harvesters out just in time. Drive barely saving his Harvesters. That could have definitely been deadly, but I think the majority of them were taken out before any real damage could have been dealt. T3 Tech Lab out on the front line. Looks like we're going to get tech over quantity when it comes to GDI. No T3 yet quite for the Black Hand faction. He seems to be happy with his Secret Shrine and his Operations Center. Oh, actually, no. Maybe we did get a... there it is, actually. T3 right there. T3 into Redeemer Engineering Facility. I'm guessing we have a Marv on the front line. Yep, there he is. Marv is beginning to develop. Hopefully some engineers are going to pop their way out in order to support that Marv, but we're going to see here in a minute as it is about halfway complete. Minor skirmishing over on the right-hand side of the map. Nothing really to write home about. Both players seem to be happy to just build up their armies, build up their fighting force in order to start a assault. It looks like Shock Trepid is taking the first little bit of aggression as he defends his secondary natural expansion and base rushes his opponent's secondary natural expansions. Plenty of Shatterers here for the defense, up and ready for go. Sounds like we do have a Marv out on the front line as it begins to move its way across the map, probably going to harvest a bit of the resources over there as he actually harvests his opponent's resources on this side of the map. Watchtowers building their way up. Plenty of hammerheads up and ready to go. It looks like Shock Trepid does not want to have a repeat of what happened last time. He does not want to have not an answer to all of those units. Does it look like we got tip core rockets for the attack bikes, increasing their effectiveness just a little bit. No dozer upgrade for the Scorpion tanks, but there's not a whole bunch of them, so it may not matter too much. Hammerheads over on the left-hand side of the map. They're gonna want to move their way over here when and where they can. Still only singular watchtower, but we do have a space command out on the front lines. Probably gonna get a little bit of zone troopers. Actually, it looks like Shock Trepid has gone on the aggression. He's gone for the attack and taken out the Tiberium Spike of Drive. Drive doesn't really have any forces over here other than these Mantises. These Mantises can take a couple of really good shots off at the Hammerheads as one of them does go down. One of them does get taken down, but the Mantis gets just a little bit too close and does get destroyed for it. That's going to be good. Taking out those Mantises will make a difference slowly but surely. Even one of those can be quite the pain to deal with for the Hammerheads. Hammerheads poking their way around, looking for something to snack on. Taking a couple of pot shots at one of the Tib Core attack bites. Able to destroy it slowly but surely. It looks like we got a little bit of a rage gen that we missed over there as the Shatterers begin to destroy themselves. I think there were 7 here beforehand, and it looks like there's only 5 left. Juggernauts now on the front line, making their way towards the natural expansion of their opponent. Marv making his way across the map, only looks like 1 unit inside it so far. No engineer, but that is not the case for the Redeemer. Redeemer does have an engineer, and I think that is a rocket squad inside of there. Spectres out on the front line for the Black Hand faction for Nod, which means the artillery battle has truly begun. There is the reveal. There is the one click, and that actually turns into a bit of aggression from Drive as he moves his way in, seeing that these Juggernauts are exposed and not moving them out quite in time. There's a couple of Watchtowers here on the front line, couple of Orcas moving their way in as Drive backs his way out slowly but surely. I think over in the background, Drive did lose a little bit of his base on his old main base side. Marv is now here on the front line. We've got a armory, and we've got a war factory out on the front line as well. Looks like Drive is here to stay. He was able to harvest a couple of resources over there. Juggernaut moving their way in, taking a couple of good pot shots off at the Purifier, but not enough to write home about just quite yet. Marv absorbing damage, but still not having an engineer in it. That Rage Field generator is probably up and ready to go, so if he's not careful, his units might start turning to attack themselves. Juggernaut's in an unfortunate position as it walks its way into its doom, getting destroyed as Drive begins his assault in earnest. We did get a good EMP out on the Redeemer that is going to tie up some of these forces, and that can make a bit of difference. There's so many forces there that are extremely important. Shatterers move, or not Shatterers, Zone, no, actually it is Shatterers. Shatterers moving their way in on the map, mopping up a couple of this man spam. Couple of Juggernauts still left. Marv still not on the front line, in an unfortunate position. Engineer popping in the Juggernaut, but Juggernaut going down just as quickly as actually the Redeemer gets taken down. Over on the right-hand side, there must have been plenty of Juggernauts here. Tip Core Rocket, attack bikes taking out the Juggernauts as more and more of the forces of Shock Trepid do go down, but the same can be said for Drive as he lost his T3 unit and only has 2 Spectres out on the front line. Maybe 3? Yeah, he does have 3 Spectres out on the front line. He's going to want to back those up here in a minute, though, as the Marv makes its way across the map. Still no engineer inside that Marv. That's going to be unfortunate. I would definitely spend those resources. Marv is now beginning to harvest the resources of his opponent, stopping the harvesting and a couple other things, selling off of the 2 refineries as Drive begins to try and recoup some of his cost. Juggernaut's in the background, but that background may turn to the foreground here any moment if they are not careful. Capturing of the Purifier as it moves its way in. Orca's doing a little bit of bombing here for the SAM turrets and a couple other units here, and Drive might actually be in a bit of trouble. It looks like he's not able to harvest resources anymore, and he's going to start being in a little bit of danger. Those Juggernauts have absolutely stopped him. That Marv has been able to absorb a good chunk of those resources, giving infusions and denying resources to his opponents, denying resources to Drive. Drive must be hurting on resources because he's only producing man spam right now. No hand and nods on the front line. Looks like it's entirely Shredder turrets with their upgrade. Marv coming down to about half HP, but it is there to absorb the shots while the Juggernauts begin to destroy what's left of the defenses of their opponent. Redeemer is up in the background, probably going to make its way forward, probably going to pop a good rage gen, but still, it's going to take some time to make it to the front lines, and it doesn't look like Shock Trepid's going to allow him to have that time. All of these Juggernauts moving their way up. Drive has done a really good job of keeping his Spectres alive, but how long will that continue? Plenty of Juggernauts here for the assault. Redeemer is finally here. Redeemer is moving its way across the map. Marv is now at half HP. If not careful, it's actually going to get taken down. It's in a really unfortunate position. There is the Rage Field generator. Marv taking a couple of pot shots at the Purifier of his opponent. As the Marv gets taken down, Drive might actually be able to turn this down. That Marv is extremely important to this assault. Attack bikes moving their way. Massive, massive EMP on top of the Redeemer, slowing down the forces of Drive. Drive went from aggressor to absolutely decimated here rather quickly as the majority of his forces go down. However, only a couple of Juggernauts are left. There's not an answer really to the man spam as man spam walk their way in to these units. Here's the answer. Here's a couple of these hammerheads trying to take out some of the rocket squads of their opponent. Pot shots off from the Scorpion tank slowly but surely, and this can go back and forward between either player as either one gets a gain, suffers a defeat, and then turns around and continues to go back for more. Drive's got to be hurting on resources as he moves a Harvester forward in order to get a little bit of scouting over. If those Juggernauts are not careful, those Spectres are going to begin to target them. There's only 2 left for the time being, but they are standing still and not doing anything. And most importantly, man spam is moving their way in on it. Plenty of Rifleman squads, but I don't think enough here to stop the Black Hand, as it looks like slowly but surely Drive is pushing his opponent back. Drive is pushing Shock Trepid back as more and more Juggernauts get taken down, more APCs go down. However, he's beginning to suffer losses as well. Spectres really worth their weight in gold this time around, chewing on the defenses, chewing on the forces of Shock Trepid. These two have put in so much work. Looks like one of their buddies did die at one point, and if they're not careful, they're going to get taken out here soon. Hammerhead going down for free. Watchtower out on the front line, stopping Drive from getting some of that much-needed resources. While Drive may have been able to get a couple of really good shots off here and there, he's not able to harvest resources, and it doesn't matter how good of a player you are if you have no money. Attack bikes trying to get a kill on the harvester, and indeed they do take it out, but that is going to be probably to their detriment. Hammerhead moving its way in, mopping up a couple of these rocket squads, slowly but surely taking out some of the forces. Looks like there's only one Spectre left for the moment, and as these small forces slowly begin to move their way over to the other side of Drive. Drive finally running out of gas in the tank, having to throw in the towel, but very much so not wanting to. The whole time just saying, I didn't hear no bell. Give us one moment. Match 3 is on the way. Here we are, Commander, on Tournament LA. Over in the bottom right-hand corner, still playing the GDI. This, of course, is Shock Trepid. I forgot his name for a second. Over in the top left-hand corner, his opponent still playing the black hand is going to be Drive. For those of you tuning in, if anyone has indeed tuned in, or maybe I'm talking into the void, who knows? But either way, we are 1-1. Each player has been able to get a round off on one another. I don't have a fancy scoreboard just quite yet for these matches, but at least I do have something going for, I'm not sure I really call it a scoreboard, but at least an overlay to put into Twitch, at least to show who's fighting who. I'll have to find a more dynamic way to get a scoreboard in here. Maybe something that I can do live, but I'm still learning Twitch. This is really only my second stream, maybe third stream, not sure. I don't remember, and I have the memory of a goldfish, so it will be hard to tell. Good amount of Cabal Cavester squads slowly but surely making their way across the map to begin to scout, poke, and prod on their opponent on Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid showing us what he can do in our last match. Speaking of things we can do, we have a sponsor. Tournament LA is endorsed by Unread Patch Notes Society. We don't know what changed, but we're mad about it. APC actually already down to half HP as just these Cabal Cavester squads getting a couple of really good shots off. We do have a Black Hand squad out on the front line, which means we might get something sneaky over here by Drive, as Drive at the very least does have these units out and ready to go. Probably going to go for that Tiberium spike, maybe planning for the late game. Taking that out early will make a difference, and he does have plenty of forces here for the defenses. APC moving its way in. Does look like we got a couple of units here out and ready to go. Tiberium Spike getting targeted down. Unfortunately, being right by that garrison means that delodging those units is going to be quite the pain. Attack bikes moving their way in. They actually are going to find a soft target, and that is going to be the MCV, as the MCV goes down to half HP. That's going to be really unfortunate. That's a lot of unnecessary damage that Shock Trepid does not need this early in the game. Drive losing one attack bike in that assault, but able to get off a decent amount of damage on that MCV. Drive's going to have to step up his forces just a little bit if he's going to pull one off over on his opponent, pull one off on Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid now going on the assault, having plenty of pit bulls and a couple of APCs to pad out his forces. Pitbull's making their way across the map, looking for a softer target, maybe going to get a little bit of revenge on the Tiberium Spike, or maybe make their way in and hopefully find a better target, which of course would be the Harvesters. Completely ignoring the Tiberium Spike, moving their way into the main base of their opponent. Do get a War Factory out on the front line, probably the production of a couple of Scorpion tanks, as these Pitbulls are now uncontested inside of their opponent's base, completely dodging this Scorpion tank, going for shots on the Harvester. Drive is actually in a fortunate position. There's the body block there for the power plant. One Harvester does get taken down. more and more begin to get targeted slowly but surely, but they change their assault to taking out these Scorpion tanks. However, this is a good chunk of armor for Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid may lose an APC in this assault, did lose at least one Pitbull in that fight, but was able to get what he wanted. Trading a Pitbull or two for a Harvester, I would say, is definitely worth it, because something you got to think about for the cost of effectiveness is entirely not just how much the Harvester costs to replace, but how much the Harvester is lost while it's not harvesting. So while you're building up, it's no longer getting those resources, obviously. Does look like, in terms of forces, that Shock Trepid is a little bit more built up than his opponent. However, Drive's not been taking that idly and has been able to build up a good number of these Scorpion tanks. However, if they don't group, if they don't get the concave, they will be at a little bit of disadvantage. A couple more Scorpion tanks moving their way in. One going down. One Pitbull getting a little bit too close. Probably going to get destroyed here in a minute, but maybe it's there for the scout. It's hard to tell. Watchtower out on the front line. Defender's advantage is here, which means these Scorpion tanks are going to go from the aggressor to the hunted rather quickly. One Scorpion tank does get taken down as another volley goes through for these Pitbulls. Watchtower doing exactly what it needs to, which is absorbing some of these shots. We do get our first Predator tank out here for Shock Trepid, but those Scorpion tanks are looking for greener pastures. The Scorpion tanks are going to maybe grab this Predator tank. Getting that isolated would be super nice. Taking those tanks out early on will make a difference, as one does finally get targeted, singled out, and destroyed. Two Predator tanks getting lost to autopathing, now having to back their way out. They are definitely in danger. He doesn't need to keep taking these losses. Shock Trepid is in an unfortunate position, just sort of sending his units into the meat grinder as another Predator tank goes down early on. That's going to sting, especially this early in the game. A third Predator tank soon to go down here any minute. There it goes. It's taken out, and there's plenty of reinforcements here for Drive. If Shock Trepid's not careful, he's going to lose this fight. There's plenty of Scorpion tanks inside his base. Scorpion tanks are taking a couple of really good pot shots off at their primary target, which is going to be the other Predator tanks of his opponent. Harvester now getting targeted down as Drive seems so far uncontested inside of Shock Trepid's base. He does move north to avoid some of these watchtowers, but he runs into more and more Predator tanks, but it looks like that is what he wants as Drive begins to pick off the forces of Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid just cannot get his forces grouped together as Drive just begins to continue to whittle down his opponent's forces. The lion's share of forces for Shock Trepid are here, and Defender's advantage is in full effect as it looks like slowly but surely the forces for Drive are being pushed out. But no, actually, they don't care for their lives. They want to take out this Harvester if they possibly can, but they're not going to get it, and they are going to indeed lose their lives. Only a handful of armor left for Drive, but I think that was a rather successful assault. Not only was able to destroy a couple of Harvesters, not only was able to destroy some infrastructure of his opponent, but he was able to prevent Harvesters from harvesting as well, which is not quite as good as destroying them, but it is a close second. Blue Tiberium has developed rather quite nicely in the center. No one's decided to grab it just quite yet. Drive's forces have got to be hurting after that. It looks like he did end up going with an all-in this time around. His Tiberium spike is up, and he is running out of resources in there, which means, no, actually, his forces aren't looking anemic. I guess doing that all-in, getting his blue Tiberium will make a little bit of a difference as Scorpion tanks begin to make their way across the map. That seems to be why he's so hyper-focused on taking out a couple of these Harvesters, because he's got to make up the economic advantages. Garrison unit is going to get the scout off on these Scorpion tanks, which means Shock Trepid has time to respond, but maybe not enough time. It looks like he's a little bit slow on the uptake for this one, as Predator tanks get caught in an unfortunate position. Once again, Shock Trepid losing forces where he does not want to lose them. Harvester getting taken down by the Scorpion tanks. Scorpion tanks still uncontested inside of their opponent's base, going for another Harvester. Harvester almost down. That will be a second Harvester taken out, and they still have plenty left to start picking on and focus firing their opponent's forces, focus firing on Shock Trepid's forces. However, if I want to say Bart Jones, if Drive does not get the gains that he needs here, he's going to be in trouble, because he's going to be long distance harvesting after this, but I think he indeed has them. I think that's 6 Harvesters down so far and plenty of armor destroyed. GDI has not been able to build up. However, they have been able to protect, at the very least, their natural expansion. I say that as soon as Spike and Buggy move their way across the map, targeting even more Harvesters. One Harvester at half HP, filled with Tiberium, may get taken out, but at the very least, it's forced to stop from deploying its resources. Drive grouping his forces over in the center of the map, taking out a couple of the scouts here for Shock Trepid, but that doesn't mean Shock Trepid knows that they are on their way as that Harvester does get targeted. It is there in the back line, and it's half HP, and it is destroyed. More and more Harvesters keep going down for Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid's in real trouble if he continues to lose Harvester after Harvester. I say that as another one goes down. Despite this natural expansion, the resources have seemed to favor Drive. Shock Trepid sort of sending his units from time to time into the meat grinder, into Drive due to autopathing, due to micro and macroing, and a couple of other things. Either way, hard to keep up. Drive has grouped all of his forces over here in the center and is making his way down towards the old main base. Not that there is much there. It looks like we got a little bit of a sell-off of what was left down here. Drive, seeing that, is going to try to move on to other targets, try to find something softer, something nicer to kill. Bike and Buggy track down the scouts of Shock Trepid. Getting another really good engagement here as a power plant goes down to half HP. Scorpion tank gets taken down. Predator tanks roll their way into the old main base. But that may be just what Drive wants, as he's got those faster moving units. Drive not taking the bait, leaving a couple of... Sorry, Shock Trepid not taking the break, leaving a couple of his forces inside his lifeline, inside this base. Scouts once again catching the forces of Drive. That is one thing Shock Trepid's been doing really, really good, is getting those scouts out, figuring out where his opponents are, which is going to be extremely important, especially when you're facing Black Hand, because of their mobility advantage. One attack bike gets just a little bit too close and does get taken out for it. Long distance harvesting is in full effect over here for Drive. Drive did get an MCV out. He needs to be able to keep these resources going, so now he's begun to develop his secondary natural expansion. Airfield out. This time we're getting Orcas instead of Hammerheads. That will be good into the Scorpion tanks if they can get them isolated. Orcas went to the north looking for something to snack on. Bike and Buggy in the south, meeting these Predator tanks here soon. MCV moving actually back to the south. I'm not sure I would even worry about that old main base. I would move into a secondary natural expansion, especially because your Orcas have already scouted it out. You know it is free, but maybe he's going to try and go for both. We'll get to see either way. There is a good amount of Tiberium left there, so maybe it is worth it. Looks like maybe half a field, maybe a fourth of a field. It's hard to tell. Orcas moving their way in, absolutely uncontested, getting a little bit of revenge on Drive, taking out what few Harvesters Drive does have, selling off of the refinery, and Scorpion tanks can do absolutely nothing because they can't look up. Orcas still uncontested, going for another Harvester. That's 3 Harvesters destroyed for Drive, and Drive can't afford quite the same losses as his opponent. I don't know if y'all saw that, but Predator tanks taking 30 shots at these Cabal Cavester squads and missing every single one of them. They must be piloted by stormtroopers, or every single one of them is cross-eyed. It is hard to tell, but that was definitely painful to watch. Predator tanks absolutely abysmal at shooting infantry, and indeed showing that they can't hit a moving target. It has to be the size of a barn in order for them to get a good shot off. Orcas getting targeted, but Predator tanks finally met up with their Cabal Cavester squads, and they are going to be able to start taking them out because they are no longer moving. Orca wasting 1 rocket on one of those units. That's going to be unfortunate for those Orcas. Every one of those is going to be really helpful to the Orcas. And we do have the man spam here for the defense of the first natural expansion now finally being developed for Drive. Orcas fueled up and armed up, ready to go, but they are going to go into a world of hurt here in a minute. There's plenty of rocket squads, there's plenty of tac bikes as they move their way into the Doom. Tac bikes turn around, begin to get a couple of really good shots off of those Orcas. Destroying those Orcas would be super helpful, but one does go down to half HP and manages to just barely make it through it. Shock Trepid finally moving his way across the map. He did have a little bit of a pitbull assault earlier, but nothing really to write home about. He has now finally moved into the center of the map, although there's not much blue Tiberium. I'm assuming Drive has been gobbling that up as much as he possibly can, and that's probably what's been keeping him going. Orcas still can't find a soft spot, can't find the underbelly that they want of their opponent, but they are going to get another good scout off on Drive, seeing where the majority of his forces are, which of course are in the north, making their way across to that secondary natural expansion. Orca's Shrike getting off its little bit of scouting off over there. So now looks like Sharktrepid's going to see what is in full effect over there. Scorpion tank into all of these Predator tanks. Predator tanks do out damage the Scorpion tanks, but not in these numbers. There's at least 2 per Predator tank. Harvester on its way to auto harvest, and if Sharktrepid's not careful, he's going to end up in a rather unfortunate position. Drive deciding to go for the softer target, which is going to be the Harvester that's trying to get this blue Tiberium in vain. Sharktrepid doing nothing with these forces so far. Maybe just trying to prepare for something over here. Has not developed his MCV just quite yet. Maybe that was his plan. No, yeah, he looks like he developed and then moved his way down to the south. That's why he has all of those forces there, because of that construction yard. It doesn't look like Drive is caught on just quite yet. Operations Center is up. Don't think we're going to get any T3 just quite yet, but probably and hopefully we'll get that Dozer upgrade. Getting that armor upgrade will help tie things up into the Predator tanks, unless, of course, the Predator tanks get their railgun. Harvester's heading down to either the blue Tiberium or the secondary natural expansion of Drive in order to steal that staggering number of man spam here. Does look like the Orcas are going to spot it here, probably to their detriment, as there they go. They go in and get destroyed, absolutely decimated. Every single one of them going down. Too many rocket squads there, and it doesn't look like Sharktrepid really has an answer to that. He's just primarily building Predator tanks, which are nice, but it's not going to do anything into this man spam. And looks like there's 2 Mantises here for the defense, maybe expecting some AP ammo hammerheads, but they are not on the table right now. Predator tanks are going to do good into the forces over here on this side of the map. I say that back. Actually, there are a couple of hammerheads, and they do have AP ammo up and ready to go. They are going to make their way across the map. They are going to make their way into the old main base, getting a little bit of revenge on Drive. Low power mode for the SAM turrets and for the base in total, as another power plant goes down, which means those SAM turrets are going to be absolutely useless, which means there's not a whole bunch to contest these hammerheads. Hammerheads are going to need to mop up those rocket squads as quickly as they possibly can, but it looks like the damage is already being dealt as Predator tank after Predator tank do get taken down. There's still a good number of them left, but they are finally starting to take a good chunk of damage. Hammerheads in a bad spot, as well as Predator tanks begin to get taken down. More Hammerheads move their way in, looking for some softer targets, trying to get to a couple of those units, but it looks like Drive has recoiled. Drive has backed his way up into a defensive stance around his old first natural expansion, and has actually been able to transition nicely into his natural expansion. Hammerheads moving their way into all of the man spam. These seems to be the only answer that they have, but they are going to be slowly but surely taken out, as plenty of rocket squads, plenty of air units, or plenty of air destroying units are out on the front line for Drive. Another scouting Orca bomb on its way, taking a couple of pot shots at the power plant. Nothing to write home about, entirely just there for the scouting. It looks like man spam is definitely the name of the game, and that has worked rather well into his opponent. These hammerheads haven't really been able to cut it when it comes to dealing with those units. Maybe they need some rifleman squads or something, maybe some APCs or something to get a couple of really good shots off. Either way, that man spam is going to be a bit of a trouble. There are a couple of APCs out on the front line, plenty of hammerheads up and ready to go. Natural expansion for Sharktrepid slowly but surely beginning to develop. This is shaping up to be quite the long round. If you're just joining now, this is our third match on the Rift between Drive and Sharktrepid. The score is currently 1-1. Hammerhead still looking for a softer target. Raider Buggy moving around to the south of the map, doing a little bit of scouting. Hammerheads are going to get spotted by that Cabal Confessor squad, which means that Drive knows that they are around. Drive knows that they are coming. Tiberium Spike finally getting targeted down by the Hammerheads. Mantis is moving their way in, so they might lose a Hammerhead for a Tiberium Spike, which might be worth it. One does indeed go down as they get pushed out of Drive's side of the map. Rifleman squad's moving their way in, getting a little bit of scouting, just trying to keep eyes on his opponent. Definitely a good strategy. That scouting is so important in just about every RTS game. You need to know what your opponent's transitioning to, because if you know what they're transitioning to, you know what to transition on your end, especially because a lot of times these metas are quite fixed, especially in a game like this. Another item of note for those of you who don't, for those of you who do not know, Master Leaf did come out with R23, I believe, which is the next patch in his series. I don't know how many more he's going to do, and I haven't read through his patch notes to see what all of the updates are, but either way, he does have it out, and it does seem to be out and ready to go if you're interested in playing it. In most of my videos, I will link in the description, at least on YouTube, how to get your hands on any of those mods, anything from the 4K mod, how to play CNC at this date and time. We do get one Shatterer out here for Shock Trap, and plenty of APCs. He's been able to get a good transition. Those Shatterers can make a difference here in this fight, but there's a staggering number of forces from both players on this side of the map. That man spam is going to be hard to deal with, but not impossible. No player wanting to take an assault just quite yet. Doesn't look like Shock Trepid is confident in his forces to take on all of that man spam. Or maybe he's just trying to bait his opponent inside of his base. Harvester getting targeted down. If he's not careful, he's going to lose it for free. It's the only Harvester on this side, and it is about half HP. Scorpion Tank's getting a couple of good pot shots off on them, almost getting destroyed. Raider Buggy moving its way in. No EMP coils yet for them. Does look like that Harvester did finally go down. Shatterer is now engaged. More units are moving their way in. Probably going to get a couple of these Hammerheads moving their way in. They need to start using those units as quickly as possible. APC into all of this man spam might be just enough to destroy all this, especially with the Shatterers here in the background. Shatterer getting a little upgrade. Mantis is moving their way in, looking for those Hammerheads to snack on, but running into a Shatterer instead. Hammerhead's completely ignoring the Mantis, going around the other side of the map. It looks like the forces for Drive have finally begun to mop up, and he's lost way too much, and he knows he has, giving another victory to Shock Trepid. That gives Drive 1 point and Shock Trepid 2 points so far in this match. Here we are in round number 4, Commander, on the map Tournament LA. Still hanging on to the GDI, we, of course, have Shock Trepid. His opponent is still in the yellow, still playing Black Hand. This is Drive. Tournament LA being a medium-sized map, pretty comparable in size-wise to the Rift, which was the previous round. But the big difference is there's a lot of garrison, and there's a lot of buildings here to sort of break up the units as they make their way across the map. So if you fight inside the city, it can be particularly difficult to get a good concave off, which is where all of your units are getting a couple of really good pot shots off. More specifically, where they are all taking shots at the same time. We are definitely in the scouting phase so far for this IES, for this match between Drive and Shock Trepid. Looks like there's a good number of fast food in Tournament LA, which would make sense because that's probably the best thing about LA is the food. I'm not a big fan of anything else, though. Tech bikes making their way across the map. It looks like we're going to get a little bit of destruction, a little bit of damage early on as the scouts have noticed there's nothing really here for the defense. Harvesters are now going to get targeted down. There's only 3 attack bikes here. They are going to be able to do a good chunk of damage, but will it be enough in order to take out this Harvester? Harvester getting so close. Losing that set of Tiberium early on will definitely bite. Body Black from the power plant is out. Ring Around the Rosie has begun, but it doesn't matter because it still gets destroyed. There are no pit bulls here for the defense. Attack bikes are still in the front line. There's the first pit bull. Too little, too late. Watchtower out as well, but the damage is already done. 3 attack bikes were able to kill a Harvester early on. That's going to be really unfortunate. Foxhole or Pillbox being developed slowly over on that side of the map. And it looks like we got to capture. Shock Trepid's managed to grab the Mutant Hovel. This is the second time in all of the IES that somebody has grabbed a Mutant Hovel, hopefully to great effect. I love to see players when they use them, and I think the Mutants are really interesting units, but I don't know why they're not used in general. Maybe they're just not cost effective. Maybe they're too slow to get out. I haven't really seen a whole bunch of thought on it as far as why people don't like them as much. Looks like despite the loss of the Harvester, First main base for each player are beginning to develop slowly but surely. One harvester down in the north. Shock Trepid, of course, losing that unit. Attack bikes and raider buggies here on the main base of Drive in order to get a little bit of kills on those pillboxes. Drive moving around over on the right-hand side of the map, looking for something else to snack on if he can. Maybe try to get that Tiberium Spike for free if he's expecting this match to last a little bit longer. And I think... No, he did not all in, but he does have 2 War Factories out and ready to go, which means he's going to try to get a bit of this aggression up and going. Bike and buggy moving their way across on the left-hand side, and of course on the right-hand side. Right-hand side is completely exposed as a harvester gets taken down. Old main base APC running for intercept, but it may not be enough. One harvester does get taken down at the old main base. Refinery now uncontested is being destroyed. One pit bull there for the defense. However, that's not going to be enough as these units are absolutely uncontested. 2 APCs and 1 pit bull are on the front line. I think that is still in the bike and buggy's favor, but only time will tell. Refinery going down to half HP, but not destroyed, so it is still out at least. Another refinery out on the front line. No War Factory over there on that natural expansion. Attack bikes moving their way down the center of the map, looking for something to snack on. Nobody's decided to grab the blue Tiberium just quite yet because there's been too much going down. Attack bike's getting a couple of really good shots off on this harvester, as another harvester is probably going to go down. That's extremely unfortunate for Shock Trepid. He cannot hold onto his harvesters to save his life. However, that time at the very least, he was able to get a couple of kills on these pesky attack bikes. Scorpion tanks are here for the transition for Drive. Drive beefing up his armor just a little bit, moving those slower moving tanks in while he's got his fast moving, hard punching attack bikes here out and ready to go. APCs into Scorpion tanks. Scorpion tanks definitely win that, targeting the pit bull, of course, first, as it slowly but surely gets destroyed as the second pit bull gets taken out. APC gets targeted. Last pit bull going down. Things not looking good for Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid throwing in the towel, tying up our score once again, 2-2. Drive taking a win off on Shock Trepid. That match definitely being a weird one, but Drive was just absolutely on top of it. Had plenty of units up and ready to go, put more production out than his opponent, and was able to outproduce and continue to take out those harvesters. One moment, Commander. We're moving on to match number 5, or round 5. Round 5 is here on Toxicity. Over in the top right-hand section of the map, this is Drive, still in his red, still hanging on to his GDI. His opponent, of course, is Drive, rocking the yellow, holding on to his black hand for dear life, but to great effect. Score is now 2-2. Drive taking the last round, tying up the score, so this will be the tiebreaker for this one. This is shaping up to be a long match between these two players. This is a best of 9 for those of you who do not know the rules of the IES. I think I have linked them previously, but I will probably start linking them more inside of my YouTube videos, of course. And if you miss this and you want a more refined version, I do take these from Twitch and put them on YouTube almost immediately afterwards. My goal for this entire week is to stream every day, hopefully, each series of matches, maybe 2 if I have the energy for it, and then upload them for the video to be released the next day on YouTube. Scouts for Shock Trepid are going to get destroyed over here on his side of, on his opponent's side of the map. Watchtower actually grabbed over here. Defense tower, I should say, grabbed, but it doesn't matter because it's only going to be able to do so much damage into these rocket squads. Man spam are definitely the answer in order to deal with this. Luckily, Drive didn't send any units that way as far as bike and buggy, because those bike and buggies would have actually got absolutely decimated by that, but it didn't matter. That engineer was a bit wasted. I don't think you make your money back from taking a defensive tower. I think that's only with the Tiberium Spike. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, if an engineer pops in a unoccupied Tiberium Spike, as in one that's never been captured, then you get a immediate cash infusion, and it already starts to make money for it. But that only happens once. If you capture it from your opponent, that same case doesn't happen. Grenade squad's moving their way in, trying to push out a couple of these units. Those will be enough to deal a good chunk of damage to them, and they do not want any part of that. Tiberium Spike going down over here on this side of the map. 2 Black Hand squads inside of these Cabal Confessor squads are going to be enough to do a little bit of damage to that Tiberium Spike. Other Tiberium Spike taking a bit of damage. It looks like Drives maybe predicting that this might be a little bit of a later game or just trying to force his opponent into a fight he doesn't want. APC getting targeted down. I think those were hallucination grenades, but I think they had minimal effect. Rocket squads are going to take out the APCs. All that's left is these grenade squads as they slowly surely begin to die. Raider buggies moving their way in. More and more units are beginning to join this fray, join this fight. Pitbull here for the defense. Would be nice to see a Predator, but Pitbulls might be the cheaper and quicker option to start dealing with all of this. Pitbull, unfortunately, targeting the wrong target, which is the Raider buggy. Its entire job is to absorb those shots. Grenade squads try and take a couple of good shots off of that Raider buggy. The Raider buggy is, of course, too fast. Secondary, Tiberium Spike for Shock Trepid is going to go down here in a moment if he's not careful, but he might be able to take out his opponent's forces beforehand. Hallucination grenade hitting absolutely nothing. APC after APC does get taken down slowly but surely. Another hallucination grenade over there. Not sure what's going off with that. Maybe that's a misclick, but either way, Tiberium Spike goes down along with the APCs, selling off of the barracks to get a rifleman squad inside of the APCs. APCs targeting these rocket bikes, these attack bikes, but they are going to get destroyed for it. As one APC is taken down. More are here to join the fray, but there's still not really an answer to the attack bike. It looks like this weirdness has been enough to throw Shock Trepid off his game. We might see an early victory over here by Drive. Watchtower out on the front line. Shock Trepid trying desperately to defend this natural expansion. He needs to get it up and going. Drive setting his abilities kind of in an aggressive stance, trying to get a little bit closer to his opponent, maybe get closer to that blue Tiberium, which I don't think has been grabbed just quite yet. No refineries on this natural expansion for either players. Shock Trepid because of the aggression of Drive, and Drive also because of the aggression of Drive. Hand and Nod sell off a couple of forces up and ready to go. It looks like Man Spam is going to be the name of the game, and why not? It has been working so far, and if you can keep up the pressure, you might be able to irk out a victory, and having those Tiberium Spikes in the background still pumping out resources are going to make a difference, and that is one advantage he does have on his opponent. Black Hand squads followed by a couple of attack bikes and buggies making their way across the map. Looks like Shock Trepid's going to get a good scout off on it, but will it matter? Is he going to have the forces to defend this? We do have AP ammo inside of the APCs. That is going to make a difference. It means those Watchtowers are also going to have AP ammo as well. Watchtower out on the front line. Barracks out on the front line. Bike and buggy moving their way to the north, getting a kill on at least one of the APCs, but maybe dying for it. Infantry moving down to the south. Shock Trepid moving a couple of troops into his opponent's base over there in the north. APCs moving down to the south, trying to intercept these forces of Drive. Drive is now in prime position to start hammering down those harvesters, and he is going to do exactly that. APCs are not numerous enough. They do not want this fight just quite yet. They're trying to buy as much time as possible. Body blocking power plant is out on the front line. However, Watchtower is still going to take damage. AP ammo definitely going to make a bit of a difference in this Watchtower. More and more APCs. It looks like Shock Trepid is a little more confident with his numbers. He does still have that defender's advantage, and he's probably building another Watchtower on the background as the assault begins in earnest. Another Watchtower out on the front line, up and ready to go, but it's not in range. APC's taking a couple of really good shots off, but also dying rather quickly to this Man Spam, to the rocket squads, and to the bike and buggy of his opponents. One APC goes down, another one pops its way down as the forces begin to dwindle for Drive. Most importantly, Shock Trepid has been able to keep up his production, keep up his resource gathering, which is definitely going to be really important. But I think Drive might actually be on top of him. He's got 2 refineries and uncontested harvesters inside of this natural expansion. Shock Trepid's still doing a really good job at his scouting. At the very least, so he constantly knows what his opponent is doing. He does seem to have that really down to a T. Better than actually a lot of other players, but the other players tend to be better in build order and economy opposed to scouting. Not that scouting is not useful. I think scouting is extremely useful. I wish people did a little bit more, but maybe a lot of these players are experienced enough to know or just kind of feel out what their opponent's going to do before it happens. That does bite them in the butt sometimes, because that does end in their detriment from time to time when it comes to losing a sort of a transition battle. APC's moving their way in, but they're going to be able to do little damage to the Scorpion Tank. Scorpion Tank deciding to back out for some reason, maybe expecting some other forces up and ready to go. Shock Trepid has not transitioned yet. He does have something up and ready to go for those, for all this man spam, but not for the Scorpion Tanks. Shock Trepid buying himself much needed time, or at the very least Drive backing out, giving Shock Trepid time to build and begin getting this transition up and going. Shatterers seem to be the answer. I'm not sure how well those do into the Scorpion Tank. Scorpion Tank's getting targeted down by the AP ammo APCs as they begin to make their way across the map, but they are here to absorb damages for the Man Spam. Man Spam finally getting targeted down, but it is too little too late as APC after APC goes down. Shock Trepid did not have his concave ready to go, and he is going to suffer for it and probably lose the game for it, because Drive is now inside of his base, almost uncontested with a staggering number of units. No watchtowers on the front line, no Predator tanks, only Shatterers, and the Shatterers are not going to cut it into this. Definitely not the appropriate transition, and Shock Trepid is going to pay for this lesson, losing Harvester after Harvester, losing Refinery, and ultimately losing this round. I'm not sure how he can come back from this. I'm not sure what he's got in the background. Maybe if he got a Sonic Emitter out or two, that could make a difference. He did get one, taking out a couple of really good shots there. Body block of the War Factory, but Sonic Emitter goes down anyways, and there goes Shock Trepid, who goes down with it. He was not able to transition just quite fast enough, so he did get taken down slowly but surely by Drive, giving Drive another point in this match, putting him, of course, in the lead. Moving our way over to Winter Meltdown. Over in the top right-hand corner, holding on to his red, keeping his GDI. This, of course, is Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid's opponent in the yellow, holding on to his black hand, still, of course, is Drive. Shock Trepid's definitely going to have to step up his game once again if he's going to contend with Drive. Drive just not letting up the pressure that entire last match, getting a couple of really good and weird transitions. Shock Trepid not able to transition into the Scorpion Tanks, although he should expect those Scorpion Tanks coming his way, because that has been, even though there's been bits of mix-up, it looks like so far into this series that Drive has been really consistent with his Scorpion Tanks. He's been consistent with his man spam, sprinkling in when and where he needs it, sort of like I think how you should with Black Hand. We haven't seen a lot of Purifiers, we haven't seen a lot of high-level tech, but we've seen Bike, Buggy, man spam, and we've seen plenty of Scorpion Tanks here from Drive. In Drive's defense, that has been working out quite well for him, and he's been able to mess with the build queue just a little bit, like in the last round, where he got that man spam out a little bit sooner than his opponent normally expects. Bike and Buggy beginning to develop over here in the south. Got a couple of bikes out to go, and probably one Raider Buggy. Looks like something did get canceled over there, or maybe it's a UI bug. Not sure quite yet. The hunt has begun for the soft underbelly in the early game, as these bikes are out for blood, out to take out a Harvester if they possibly can. And if there's not a Pitbull out and ready to go, that is going to be rather unfortunate for Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid is now caught unawares as the Harvester begins to get targeted. He does have a Watchtower out here for the defense and one Pitbull. His defense seems to be shored up just a little bit better than it was last time, at least for his sake. MCV getting targeted. MCV does pack its way up. Rockets moving their way in, taking a couple of really good shots off at the MCV. If Shock Trepid is not careful, he might lose his unit here, but maybe he doesn't care because he's got these Pitbulls to push out his opponent's units, as indeed they do get taken down, and the natural expansion is being developed upon as the MCV makes its way slowly across the map. Last attack bike is finally taken out, but not without getting a kill, not without taking out that Pitbull slowly but surely. did not get an all-in for Drive. He's also developing his natural expansion, which is quite a large natural expansion. I think both of these are actually quite large in the field, or maybe it just seems large due to the zoom in, zoom out range. I know some mad lads out there actually do the math to figure out exactly how much Tiberium is in these fields. Like, for example, there's a map with very square Tiberium that I was watching on one of Cyber's streams, and somebody in his chat actually did the math for how much more space a rectangle has, or a square has, opposed to a circle, especially when it comes to Tiberium. I don't know if they just threw that in ChatGPT, or if they just happen to be a massive math nerd, or if that's a random fact they have remembered. Either way, I thought it was hysterical that just somebody rattled that off the top of their head. Granted, I didn't validate it because I'm not doing math and you can't make me, but either way, it was definitely interesting for me to see that little bit of fact. Scorpion tanks are here and beginning to take a couple pot shots off at the War Factory. One Predator tank is here with the Defender's advantage. That is going to help push this out, but if they're not careful, they will lose this War Factory. Second Predator tank slowly but surely moving its way across the map. Now finally beginning to take a couple pot shots off the garrison units, but there are rocket squads in there, so if they're not careful, they will take a good chunk of unnecessary damage. Speaking of unnecessary damage, Predator tank does get taken down as more begin to join the fray. They do have to reverse their move way out of here because they are in danger. They're outnumbered by the Scorpion tanks. They may outgun them, but not when there are that many. One Predator tank moves its way out, one Predator tank moves its way in and gets destroyed from a body block from the power plant. Probably a watchtower out here in a moment. More and more Predator tanks beginning to develop, but it looks like Drive's going to keep up the pressure. He's going to try to keep his advantage and push into these Predator tanks. This game might already be over if we're not careful here. If Shock Trepid doesn't have an answer, there's 3 more Predator tanks moving their way around. They do have Defender's advantage, but they can't quite make it up as another Harvester gets taken down there. Drive just absolutely not relenting on Shock Trepid. Still going blow for blow, still taking him out when and where he can. Command post out here for the for the body block, and it's just in time. One refinery does get sold off after a couple of Harvesters do get taken down. One Scorpion tank in an unfortunate position as the assault has finally begun to slow down on Shock Trepid's side of the map. Command post, like I said, out on the front line. No AP ammo just quite yet, but he probably doesn't have the money. He's probably got to replace those Harvesters, which are going to be very much so needed. Maybe we'll put another refinery down here, get those resources up and going. He does have a bit more Predator tanks here for the defense. Looks like we're getting more and more Scorpion tanks here for Black Hand, for Drive. I do wish Drive just did a tiny bit more scouting, but he is aggressive, which he just sort of kind of scouts with his army, which is definitely one of the things of all time. Predator tanks in the south beginning to make their way slowly but surely across the map, looking for maybe a soft underbelly for them to go for. If they fought the Scorpion tanks, they might be in a good position, but not if his opponent has Defender's advantage, because those reinforcements are going to make a difference, especially with how fast those Scorpion tanks are. Shock Trepid finally getting a little bit of scouting off as his Pitbull makes his way across the map and almost scouts the old main base of his opponent, but not quite in time. Predator tanks deciding better and moving to the center of the map. Hitting our first real lull so far as everybody begins to feel each other out and try to figure out where one another is, because that fog of war makes it very hard to see where everyone is. Shock Trepid, not one to be snuck up on, has garrison units quite across the map and has a unit over here in the south so he can see the sneakiness coming. He's definitely going to need that into a player like Drive, who's had all of this sneakiness, has had all of this aggression, and is going to be able to be, needs to prep for all of this. Predator tanks looks like they're finally moving their way into the Scorpion tanks. I do think they can win this if they get the proper concave off, especially if Drive gets caught in an unfortunate position. There is a hammerhead here, and it looks like the Predator tanks are going to be able to win this if they're careful about it. They need to focus fire and start taking down the Scorpion tanks, and indeed they are doing it. The tables may have finally turned on Drive, but there's still time for him to turn it around. He does have plenty of man spam, and the only answer so far to the man spam is these couple of hammerheads. Hammerheads taking about half their health in damage, having to make their way across the map. Predator tanks having to back their way out as well. Either way, that was a good engagement for Shock Trepid. That does look favorably in his side, on his side. Hammerhead's looking for greener pastures in the south, although there's not much here. Low power mode for the refinery, giving it a little bit more defense when it's powered down like that. But it looks like Shock Trepid's not going to take the bait. Sounds like we got a Marv in the background up and ready to go. No Redeemer yet in order to counter that. I'm not sure if your opponent can hear the T3 unit or if that's just me as a spectator. If someone wants to let me know either in chat or in game if you can hear the T3 unit of your opponent, you know, like can Drive hear the Marv and can Shock Trepid hear the Redeemer as it comes out, as it makes its awaken noise. Man spam is out here in full effect, and Shock Trepid's going to have time to see it, going to have time to see that it is moving its way down the center of the map. But will he be able to transition in time? He's got a lot of hammerheads, but those have struggled in order to kill the man spam, and I think there's a couple of mantises. No mantises, but there are beam cannons here in the mix. Looks like hammerhead's going for the scorpion tank instead, as they take a couple of really good pot shots, but it doesn't matter because they got that kill almost for free. Hammerhead's still looking for a shot, taking a couple of pot shots from these rocket squads. Center of the map is being developed over here by it looks like Drive, as Shock Trepid marvises up the resources in the north, giving him a much needed infusion of resources, and also taking the one in the south, moving his Predator tanks in the south to defend all of this. However, those Predator tanks are going to be hard pressed to kill all of that man spam. One attack bike moving to the south, trying to figure out where his opponent is and going to get destroyed for it, but he's going to know where his opponent's forces are, at least for the moment. That is going to distract things from the Marv in the north. Looks like we do have two MCVs, two construction yards out for Shock Trepid, one in the north and one in the south. Couple of reinforcements probably on their way, maybe some sniper squads, hard to tell. Either way, they are getting deployed slowly but surely. Scout getting destroyed inside of Shock Trepid's base. Sam's on the front line, not wanting to deal with those units. Not a bad strategy. Predator tanks moving into the south. Gonna look for something to snack on, but the man spam is here as well. It seems like it is a little bit everywhere, protecting this here, and they're gonna be able to do a good chunk of damage to these units. They probably lose the fight, but it'll be hard to tell. Predator tank's not wanting to take the fight as Shock Trepid backs his way out slowly but surely. Hammerhead moving its way in, taking down the Tiberium Spike of his opponent. Looks like Tiberium Spike for Shock Trepid has been left alone. I don't know if there's just one per map or what. Orcus here for the Scout, not really going to see anything, taking a couple of good shots off on the SAM turrets. SAM turrets, I think, are in low power mode. It's hard to tell. Scorpion tanks moving their way forward, and Scorpion tanks take down the SAM turret. That will give the Hammerheads time to destroy their opponents, but I'm not sure that Drive really cares too much about losing this over here. However, losing his forces could suck plenty of SAM turrets out on the front line. This is not a fight I think Shock Trepid wants. He's not really going to get any gains out of this unless he's just trying to get pure mobility, but this just gives time for Shock Trepid, or for Drive, to reposition. He is going to lose his old main base here, which will suck a little, but really not that much. It is forcing at least half of the man spam from the center of the map over down here for whatever reason. Maybe expecting a larger assault. Selling off of the old main base does happen slowly but surely, and it looks like Shock Trepid has had plenty time to develop. I still think the main problem is going to be all of that man spam, so hopefully all of those Shatterers are going to be enough. There's definitely plenty of SAM turrets on the front line, plenty of Mantises, and a couple of beam cannons, which are the first time we've seen Drive transition into beam cannons. I wonder what his plan is for those. I wonder if he's going to get some Venoms to bounce it off of, or what his goal is with those. Juggernauts moving in the north to the south. Probably going to be moved upon by these units over here. A little bit of man spam moving their way in. They're probably going to move their way to their doom, but I think they're here just for a bit of scouting. They're going to see that all of these Shatterers are here on the front line. It looks like the lion's share of the forces of Shock Trepid are here and ready to go. Those units do end up going to their doom, but it's only going to matter so much. Marvin on the front line, construction yard out on the front line, probably a couple of watchtowers here on the front line here in a moment, maybe a sonic emitter. That would be much, much better. We do get looks like an orbital strike here, getting a couple of really good shots off on some of this man spam and some of the shredder turrets. A couple of really good shots off, actually taking down that shredder turret slowly but surely, as it looks like we're getting a bit of a pincer attack. Plenty of shatterer tanks in the south to deal with the man spam, plenty of juggernauts in the north and in the south as well. Does look like we got a sonic emitter on the front line, and there is the GG as Drive throws in the towel, giving a win to Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid was just able to build up his snowball, build up the power faction of GDI, and irk out a win. This is still anyone's match. This is still anyone's series to take. Speaking of, we're moving on to the next round. Here we are on Tournament Highlands. Looks like we're not going to get any mix-ups whatsoever in this match. So far, it looks like both Drive and Shock Trepid have stuck to their respective colors and factions. Shock Trepid holding on to GDI and his opponent holding on to Black Hand. These factions are probably who they practice the most for this upcoming tournament. Or maybe it's who they have the most confidence in. Either way, this has been a pretty decent match. I think, at least from watching just this fight, I think Shock Trepid is the underdog in this series when it comes to going into Drive. He seems a little bit less sure of his movements, but he's still able to pull off some really good ones like that last round into Drive. Drive just didn't transition properly. He relied a little bit too heavily on his man spam. Didn't get any T3 up and going. Didn't get a Redeemer, which I think a Redeemer would have made a big difference, because that Rage Field Generator, if your opponent has these not shredders, is it shredders? No, not. Shredder turrets are the defensive platform. It's shatterers. There you go. Shatterers having to run into a Rage Field Generator is extremely detrimental for them and for you in general, because having that hit your backline absolutely stings. Operations Center out. Operations Center getting sold. Black Hand Squad going to move their way around. Unfortunately, going to run right into this foxhole, but the line of sight might be here enough for Black Hand to take them out. Foxhole getting abandoned immediately. Rifleman Squad's wanting absolutely nothing to do that. Another Rifleman Squad probably moving into his opponent's base. Hopefully he can get a foxhole down as quickly as possible. Knowing what Drive is going to do, I think, is pretty important in my opinion. Looks like he's going to go north instead, and maybe this other Rifleman Squad is going to go south, and maybe he's going to get 2 pillboxes. Shock Trepid hasn't been super quick on the uptake when it comes to... Oh no! Black Hand Squad's getting absolutely decimated by the Harvester of... Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid's Harvester really just out to get groceries and came back with murder instead, selling off of the MCV, but of course his opponent's going to see that 2 war factories out on the front line, bike and buggy being produced. No Scorpion tanks just quite yet. Will Shock Trepid be able to defend this? No bikes just quite yet. Maybe he's just sending the Raider buggies out first since they're a little bit slower. Either way, there's a couple of pitbulls here to start taking really good shots off on these Raider buggies, but not if they are not concave, not if they are in a good spot. They do try to group up a little bit slowly but surely, but one pitbull does get sort of caught in a rather unfortunate position. However, it did have more health than its opponent. It is going to get destroyed for it, though, nonetheless, as the attack bikes do wrap up the kill. More and more attack bikes are probably going to join this assault. It looks like he's probably going to go for the Tiberium spikes once again. He really wants to go for those long game resources, and indeed, he very much so is going to try that. Shock Trepid does have a good number of pitbulls built up, ready for this fight. He saw the all-in. He didn't sell off his MCV. Maybe he's confident in his ability in order to fight these with the pitbulls. And with his defender's advantage, only time will tell, so that'll remain to be seen. Scorpion tanks are the transition once again for Drive. Will Shock Trepid be able to counter in time? APCs out on the front line, mixed in with a couple of pitbulls, getting a healthier mix of units this go-around for Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid getting a couple of really good pot shots, but losing 1 pitbull in that exchange, which is going to be a rather expensive mistake. Every one of those pitbulls is going to be really valuable in this upcoming fight. Attack bikes moving their way into the north. If they're not careful, a couple of harvesters may get targeted down, but they do go for the power plant instead. Pitbull slowly but surely moving their way across it. They do outnumber their opponent here. Drive could be in danger. Losing these forces this early on is definitely going to stink. He's not paid attention. He lost on the macro a little bit. Now being forced out completely, losing that fight entirely. That's going to be a critical mistake for Drive, but the important part is, will Shock Trepid be able to capitalize on that? One more bike, one more Raider buggy are going to get taken out over here. Actually, Scorpion Tanks moving their way into this first natural expansion over here for Drive, or for Shock Trepid, focusing down some of these harvesters, but there are plenty of pitbulls here for the fence. Is it going to be enough to stop this assault? One harvester does go down, but so do plenty of the Scorpion Tanks. It looks like that assault was entirely just meant to be a distraction, although I'm not sure how worth it was going to be, because so many Scorpion Tanks were taken down. So many of the Raider buggies and bikes were taken down. Did get a Guardian out on the front line. Don't see too many of those these days. Not sure how good they are. Rocket Squad's here to push out the bike and buggy of their opponent. Fast-moving APCs and Pitbulls also here out and ready to go for Shock Trepid. Looks like we got a little bit of sneakiness over here by Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid able to grab the Tiberium Spike of his opponent. Drive able to grab Shock Trepid's Tiberium Spike. Scout is going to notice that these forces have begun to move on this first natural expansion. That does give Shock Trepid time to answer, but maybe not time enough in order to save this refinery. All those little bitty resources gains will make a big difference. Scorpion Tank after Scorpion Tank is getting taken down as the assault has begun in earnest. If Drive's not careful, he may end up in a rather unfortunate position. War Factory out on the front line here for the defense is going to help thin down these numbers and keep some of his units alive. It doesn't look like Drive is in a great position just quite yet. However, he's slowly but surely winning this fight. He will not be able to stay here too long. No AP ammo yet for Shock Trepid. Shock Trepid's forces have begun to dwindle, but they do have the healing. They do have the repairs, but more and more harvesters do get taken down. This might be the linchpin to this strategy, because it doesn't matter if you have all these units if you cannot keep any harvesters up and ready to go. And I think Shock Trepid is definitely hurting on the economy front. Tiberium Spike is getting targeted. That's definitely going to be crucial for Drive to destroy, to put the squeeze on the economy of Shock Trepid more and more, especially because he's going to have to start long-distance harvesting himself here any moment. Tanks in an unfortunate position, getting a little bit too close there. Looks like Shock Trepid sort of sending them to their doom. They're in a really bad spot. They might be able to bait in a couple of units, but I'm not sure that matters. Where are the majority of the forces for Shock Trepid? Shock Trepid's in a really bad spot. It's turned down to tank versus tank. Defender's advantage is still here for Shock Trepid, but the number advantage is here for Drive, as there's so many of these Scorpion tanks, and it looks like Predator tanks just slowly beginning to trickle in, just going down to the meat grinder. Not getting the concaves off they need. Sure, they have the healing, but it doesn't matter if the focus fire is here. More and more Predator tanks do get produced, but they also get taken down just as quickly. Shock Trepid just not able to gather his forces, and I think that is the game. I think Drive has won this one, and I'm not sure what Shock Trepid can do to come back from this. Selling off of plenty of units, transitioning entirely over into the other main base. Shock Trepid not wanting to give up that $700 prize pool, fighting to the very last minute, fighting tooth and nail into Drive, trying to keep his dreams alive, trying to keep himself in this tournament. Plenty of Scorpion tanks there in the development. They're going to be able to slowly but surely build their way back up, getting a couple more forces. However, is that going to give enough time? As another harvester actually goes down in the south, attack bikes sneaking their way past not only Shock Trepid, but also the caster, because I miss them as well. Pitbull here for the scout, going for one of the harvester, but is going to get taken down. I'm not sure you want to waste your units there, Shock Trepid. I know you want to get some scouting out, but send a rifleman squad or something. Not sure that is going to help you. This might be the final nail in the coffin as the attack bikes and Scorpion tanks make their way across the map, going for the War Factory in the north. It's probably worth just to sell it off at that point. He does get a little bit of a paycheck from it, which is going to help. It would be nice to see a bit of man spam into all of this. He doesn't have any attack bikes out. This would be a good time to get a barracks out and ready to go and start producing a couple of those rocket squads, because they would do rather well into every single one of these units. Shock Trepid just can't catch a break. He keeps ended up in these really unfortunate positions where he just sends his units into the meat grinder, and Drive is not going to let him get away with that mistake. He's going to double down, he's going to punish, and he's ultimately going to win this round. Drive is not going to let up the assault, as Shock Trepid may not know it, but the game is already over. Indeed, he does finally sense it. He does see the writing on the wall and calls the GG, moving us on to our next round. Here we are on Badland Hills. Over on the right-hand side of the map, still holding on to his GDI, keeping his red. This, of course, is Shock Trepid. His opponent for the moment and for this whole match and for all of these rounds, of course, has been Drive, rocking the yellow. Plain black hand. Don't think we got any changes whatsoever throughout this entire match. It looks like, according to my notes here, everyone's kept with both their color and their faction. I would hope that people keep their color in the tournament, because it makes it hard to cast these when you've got someone switching a color every single round, especially if we have to make things for it. Oh, I forgot to switch over to the other mode. There we go. You can see a little bit better now. Things beginning to develop slowly but surely on each side of the map. Nothing sneaky yet for Drive. Everybody grabbing their Tiberium spikes. Everybody scouting each other out. I'm really, really curious. I want to know what the transition is going to be for Drive. Drive really seems to set the tempo. Not only has he been very good about grouping and concaving his forces, he hasn't been as great at scouting as I would like him to be, but he has been great on subverting expectations, and he has been great on transitioning and keeping up the aggression, where I guess he doesn't scout quite as much as maybe some of the other players. He does have these early assaults, which his military just sort of kind of serves as that. Flame Tank is out, but it is going to get spotted. Black Hand is out as well. Flame Tank not actually moving its way forward onto the pillbox, letting those units get away unscathed. Raider Buggy is there to finish up the kill on those rifleman squads, as the Black Hand squad and Flame Tank make their way across the map. Shock Trepid did see it. Shock Trepid does have time to build it up, and he looks like the answer is going to be these Predator tanks. One Predator tank is out. It's going to be good into that Flame Tank, as it looks like it's probably going to meet it here in the middle. Words are hard. Flame Tank skirting its way around, doing a little bit of a juke actually on this Predator tank, moving its way towards the center of the map. Bike and Buggy, a couple of Black Hand squads shooting over the hill in order to destroy that Tiberium spike. But the important thing to keep track of is going to be this Flame Tank. Flame Tank trying desperately to get through the north. Looks like Bike and Buggy is going to see that Predator tank that was fishing for the Flame Tank, and it is going to get destroyed slowly but surely. Shock Trepid sending more and more tanks in for their doom. He's just not grouping his forces, and he's getting punished for it. You can't do that in these kinds of tournaments. You need to group your units. If you're going to lose them, you need to be a little bit more liberal about where you place them, as another Harvester does get taken down. Flame Tank's not even really having to do too much. It looks like Shock Trepid's kind of doing the damage to himself. Did get a sell-off of MCV over there by Drive. That's why he's got 2 war factories and plenty of units out already ready to go. His rushes have been a little bit of delayed rushes, I feel, at least in terms of timing, but that delay seems to have made a difference. Not sure where that Flame Tank ran its way off to. Flame Tank is still up, still at full HP. What I'm guessing is Bike and Buggy is going to move their way on the south, forcing Shock Trepid's forces over there. So the Flame Tank has time to move its way in. Predator Tank moving its way over to the Tiberium Spike, maybe sensing that the Flame Tank is on that side of the map, which of course it is, but he will see that here in a moment. Flame Tank going to go for that Tiberium Spike, maybe going to be able to take it out before the Predator Tank gets there. Who knows? We'll get to see here in a moment either way. Natural expansion, at the very least, for Shock Trepid is beginning to get developed. And those resources are going to be the big difference. Flame Tank does manage to take out the last remaining Tiberium Spike. Predator tanks pushing out their opponent, but if they're not careful, they're going to run into Scorpion tanks, and they're going to get outnumbered. If Shock Trepid's not careful, he's going to make the same mistake he's been making over and over, which is sending his units to the Doom and not paying attention to him. And indeed, he is doing that. He's not concaving. He's not paying attention to him. I know there's a lot going down, especially in the north, but you can't keep sacrificing those units like that. It's going to cost you the tournament, and indeed, he is suffering for it, as Drive is not going to let that mistake go unpunished once again, and he's going to press his way into Shock Trepid's base. Shock Trepid, once again, is in trouble. He has a good chunk of pit bulls out here for the defense, and maybe a couple of tanks in the background on their way, coming over slowly but surely. Maybe that'll be enough. Drive actually making a little bit of a mistake here, sending his units a little bit further forward than he needs to, but I think he's got the units for it, at least for the current moment. This natural expansion is absolutely not going to be developed upon anytime soon, at least while these Scorpion tanks are inside of here. One pit bull does get sent to its doom inside the Tiberium field. Refinery does get targeted down. Refinery does get destroyed or sold off there for a small amount of resources, but it doesn't matter. Scorpion tanks continuing their assault on the Predator tanks, and left and right, more and more of the units of Shock Trepid are going down and getting destroyed. I think this is already the end of Shock Trepid, already the end of this match. I'm not sure what Shock Trepid's going to be able to get done. These Scorpion tanks are just absolutely decimating him. More Predator tanks out here for the defense. Harvester making its way down to the southern expansion, trying to grab those resources as quickly as possible. Forces for Drive beginning to regroup. That's going to be really important in this fight, because anyone who sends their units forward to die is going to suffer for it, and so far it has been Shock Trepid that has suffered for it. Speaking of, there it is, same mistake over and over. It looks like Shock Trepid is maybe fatigued and just running out of gas mentally. I know my voice is definitely getting fatigued in this case. There's only 4 Predator tanks to deal with this entire set of Armada. And to throw insult to injury, there is an EMP locking down not only what's left of the armor of Shock Trepid, but also his MCV, forcing him to throw in the towel, giving Drive another victory, and most importantly, giving Drive this match. I lost track of the score particularly, but I do know that Drive has come out on top right there, especially with that last game, especially with this ending on an 8-game series. Thank you so much for tuning in, Commander. This has been practice number 2 on the IES Invitational. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be posting this video on YouTube tonight, hopefully, to come out tomorrow. And then I'm going to rinse and repeat and try to do the same thing Tuesday, Wednesday, etc., etc. All right, either way, thank you so much for joining me, Commander. I have been your host, Korak. Transmission out.